Welcome to For the Long Run, the podcast exploring the why behind what keeps runners running long, strong, and motivated. I'm your host, Jonathan Levitt. I've been running for a few years now and have the privilege of meeting many incredible runners on my travels all across the country. This podcast is intended to share those amazing conversations. Today's guest is Adrienne Langelier. Adrienne is a sports psychology consultant and counselor at Texas A&M who began running competitively in graduate school, and the passion grew from there. Soon after that came a career as a sports psychology consultant, and she enjoys being able to live what she loves on a daily basis. Adrienne is passionate about all things running, reading, exploring, and helping others along in their respective journeys. Our chat covered much of that last part, exploring how to maximize performance by improving an athlete's mental strength. We talked a lot about the pain of a good race and how to lean into that pain to get the most out of your body. I had a lot of immediate wins and takeaways thanks to this one, and hope you do too. Enjoy. I am here with Adrienne, who is a sports psychologist, and we are going to dive into the mental side of training. So thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So you mentioned you are sitting in your office in Texas. So where in Texas are you?
Right now, I'm in College Station, Texas, home of Texas A&M, obviously, Gingham Aggies. Went to college there, and this is my second location. My primary location is just north of Houston, Texas, in the Woodlands.
Very cool.
Big running town up there.
Big running town, and they've got something about a triathlon out there too, huh?
Yeah, I'm getting a handful of people ready for that, actually.
Very nice. So, how did you get into your field?
Oh my gosh, it's kind of a long story, but I will try and condense it as much as possible.
We've got a podcast for a long run, so we can go. It can be a 5-mile long run, or it can be a 50-mile long run. So,
okay. All right,
dive into it.
We've got leverage here. So it was something that even when I was younger, I thought was cool. I've played sports pretty much since I was 5 years old. I was that girl either kicking a soccer ball or had a ball in her hand, but my most favorite thing was to race the boys in the neighborhood. So I am a lifelong athlete, and I just couldn't leave sports. Like I was going to Texas A&M to study psychology, and I was going to just do general counseling work and all that kind of stuff. But I also worked as a personal trainer and loved it. It was great. However, everything that was holding my clients back was in their heads. So I'm just like, okay, these people really, really like to talk to me. However, we're missing something here. And long story short, I take a clinical psychology class taught by his name's Arnold Leonis. I literally this morning lectured his class on this very thing. So it was kind of a full circle.
Should have mic'd you up.
Yeah, right. And he's a sports psychologist. So and he starts talking about it a little bit. I'm just like, oh, huh. I'm like, okay, this is actually a thing. It's not like getting into the CIA or something like that. Because I thought it was like super hard to get into the field or whatever. So I kind of forged a relationship with him and spent some time with him, getting some guidance on how to get started. And then I decided, okay, we're going to make this work. So, just kind of continued on, attended graduate school, and obviously got the degrees I needed, and I started my own practice at age 30. So I've been independent pretty much off and on for the past, say, 6 years or so.
Cool. And
hopefully that made sense. But.
Yes. And who are generally the types of athletes that you're seeing? Are they most endurance athletes?
I have what I call the big four, and most of them are individual-based sports, running and track and field, swimming, gymnastics, and golf.
Why do you think that that's more of a product of referrals and who's in your network, or do you think that the individual or runner versus a baseball player? Do you think there's a difference in the mental game there?
I think it's about 75-25. I was just talking to a client earlier about just how mental the sport actually is, which, yeah, baseball's a mental sport and everything as well, which I see a fair amount of baseball players also. But
Yes, I guess especially being where you're at.
yeah, but I think just by default, they're just more accepting, I think, in the endurance world, the racing world and everything, because you reach a certain level and you tend to start to need somebody else to kind of help take you the rest of the way.
Definitely. So I think we're going to start the podcast talking about sort of the benefits of working with a sports psychologist, and then sort of get into some more technical, like if you're in this scenario, how do you maximize that? So as long as that's cool with you, let's get rolling here.
Let's do it.
So why do you think it's helpful for the average person to work with someone like yourself?
If we spend so much time training anyway and invest a lot of time, money, and energy into, whether it's gear, nutrition, anything like that. Mm-hmm. Sometimes just having just a little bit in your toolbox tends to go a long way. And a lot of times, running coaches, track coaches, whatever, they're really good about the physical piece. However, when it comes to what to do when, it's really good to have somebody walk through certain strategies and stuff like that, so that you're going to have, you're going to get the most out of the experience. So usually working with somebody like myself, it kind of opens the door for, I think, more enjoyment of the sport and more consistent performance too.
Definitely. So one thing you mentioned is the opening the door for more enjoyment.
Yeah.
So I haven't done a whole lot of these podcasts so far, but the consistent trend, and again, the goal is exploring the why and what.
Well, you got to love it,
Yeah, what keeps people interested in. Yeah, and so I had this conversation with Ben Rosario and Ali Kiefer, and they both highlighted this in particular, that they're so invested in, and Ben really hammered the point home with his athletes. He's like, look, we don't care about results at the end of the day. We care that our athletes are, I mean, they have to care about results, but their main goal is the love of the process and the consistency and enjoyment and fulfillment of the process. And he's like, if you have that, the results come. What would you say for an athlete who is fully invested in the process and fully loving the process, but they're not seeing the results? I mean, it's a tough pill to swallow if you're going at it for years and years and years, but not.
Oh, that's a great question. You know what I would ask them first? Do you like to perform?
Yeah.
Because I know a lot of athletes, they love the training, because there's a lot you can get out of it.
Right.
That just the thrill of like, oh my God, I just knocked that workout out of the park.
Right.
There's social aspect. There's the fact that you can down half a pizza without blinking an eye, which is always fun.
Yep. Half a pizza? What do you mean half? Whole.
A full pizza, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Throw in a couple beers, maybe a cookie. We're good. But there's that. And then there's the race, kind of the race atmosphere. It's different. It's a little more intense. Okay. Depending on what level you're racing at, it's either a little to a lot more intense. Like I just got back recently from USA Cross Country, and it was a very different event versus any of the city marathons or anything like that. It was a really cool experience, but it was just
just like running from the gun immediately, and
oh yeah, and it was just like it was such a cool experience because like now I know exactly what my top level athletes go through.
Yep.
So, but anyway, kind of back to the original. Yeah. The original question is getting them to wrap their minds around actually performing and being able to express their fitness. And then we have to figure out what their thinking style is. Are they more, kind of a verbal person? Do they need to talk themselves through things? What kind of goals do we need to be setting? Because if you love the process, what you want to do is extend those process goals into the racing world too. And get them to not, just like Ben Rosario was talking about, not focus on the results as much, but figure out where within the race you want that process to unfold and how are we actually going to execute that.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, um, that question came from a friend, and
Yeah.
it hit home because
You got to find that mindset. You have to find that key emotional state that's going to help you
yeah, and
perform.
and it was a problem that I've had in the past,
Hmm.
and like my training has gone really well at
Hmm.
some points over the last few years, but my
Hmm.
my longer distance racing has sucked,
Yeah.
and sucked by like standards of like Boston 2017. I ran an hour over goal time.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and I ran the Philly Marathon maybe 15 minutes over goal time or
Hmm.
12ish minutes over goal time.
Hmm.
But I had really 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 solid training,
Hmm.
and and so I I sort of came down from the high of the training and like, wow,
Yeah.
that went really well,
Yeah.
and then had a really disappointing race. So what
Yeah.
I feel like that's a super common result that
Oh,
athletes
very much
have.
it.
So where do you go? What are the questions you ask an athlete like that?
Yeah. Oh, and that's like one of the number one things that'll bring a runner into my office, to be honest, is it's just like you're crushing your training
Yeah.
and your racing is crushing you,
Yeah.
basically. And you're just like, what? I don't understand what's going on.
Yeah.
So the process I would do with, runner A, basically, in question is there's moments during a race where you have to make certain decisions and you have to be able to read the situation in an adaptive way and not lose your cool, essentially. So let's just say, like, for you, I'm going to try not to shrink your head too much. Did you have a moment, let's say in Boston or Philly, where you're just like, oh crap, this doesn't feel right, or
Yeah.
this does not look like my training? Do you have those?
Yeah.
Right. And it catches us off guard because I think sometimes maybe it's not even conscious. And I've been guilty of this many a times myself where um, we're just like, it's not supposed to feel this way. This is
Right.
not how it's supposed to go.
Right.
Then it's like our brain literally capsizes in our head. And we go from being positive and optimistic to when we're challenged, we don't know how to meet the challenge.
Hmm.
So I want to know, what is the athlete telling themselves when this is happening? What is the kind of anxiety or frustration level that it usually results? And have they ever had instances where they've been able to work through that? If yes, I want to know. I want to know kind of what that looked and sounded like. If no, then we work to help them navigate that. And a lot of kind of a common thing I do is like have athletes kind of come up with a script for, if X happens, I will do Y. Because I found that's, of course, we want to visualize ourselves doing well. We want to do positive self talk, of course. But I think athletes and consultants who don't go into this, and athletes are really doing themselves a disservice if they don't consider the challenges. Because if we really, if we were to zoom out, that's kind of what makes a great race great, is not because you just went out and you were just flawless from the gun, but that you overcame something.
Hmm. So that leads me to sort of another question I was thinking of.
Mm-hmm.
So at the trail camp I was just at, we had a session on sports psychology
Mm-hmm.
led by a woman who works for Northern Arizona, um, and consults with mostly their endurance athletes and or all of their athletes, but mostly endurance athletes. And one of the things that she had us do was think about our best races
Mm-hmm.
and the characteristics of our best races. And I guess my question is, so my answer to that was, my 5K PR comes from a day um, where I was surrounded by friends. I had two friends, two really good friends that I respect as athletes
Mm-hmm.
tremendously, come up to me on the start line and say, "Follow us. You're going to PR."
Mm-hmm.
And they're way faster than I am, and they gave their race to me basically.
Yeah.
I didn't look at my watch once,
Yeah.
and I PR'd by like 25 seconds in the 5K,
Wow.
and that was in 2014. And I haven't run that close to that time in a race since,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm sort of like struggling, and I haven't had a race that was that good
Yeah.
since. Um, how do you take something like that and pull some of the characteristics of a race like that and apply it, for the
Right.
future?
Well, obviously you're in a positive mental state.
Mm-hmm.
And you obviously are one of those athletes that benefits from some social facilitation, basically having somebody there, having some support.
Right.
So there were, the external factors kind of set you up. So in order, we're not always going to have that, which, yeah, we need, it's awesome to have that kind of a situation.
Right.
But
it's not realistic every time.
Yeah. Working on some inner tools and being able to, it's going to sound kind of cheesy and weird, but learn how to turn into your own internal pacer,
mm-hmm.
I guess. And, honestly, if I was in your situation, I would be taking notes of like maybe if they said anything to you during the race or whatever, take that, build that in, internalize those statements and use those in a racing situation.
That makes sense. The positive self-talk is an interesting one. My coach, David Roche, is, notorious for, and the swap
I'm halfway
approach.
Through the happy runner right now.
Yeah. And it's wild how, this sort of unrelenting, always present, voice of reason, not only voice of reason, but like, you're awesome. Everything you do is awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, and tweak this in this little way. Oh no, you shouldn't race that because it's more realistic to do that. But 98% of that relationship is positive self-talk and or positive talk about the athlete.
Right.
So how do you sort of pull that and bring that into not the coach-athlete relationship, but the athlete relationship?
Like the athlete's relationship with themselves?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it kind of depends on your personality, I think, number one. But what you want to do is, you got to be kind of forgiving with yourself if for some reason something doesn't go as planned.
Right.
And I'll use some examples. A lot of times with my athletes, I'll use a lot of personal examples because I've been racing for 12 years now. Geez, getting old. But
leveling up in the categories.
Yeah. So a lot of times, like if I hit a rough spot, I'll be like, "You're fine. Just like you don't have to. This is temporary." And I'll just be like, "You're still really good." And I'll just kind of remind myself that I'm a rock star, quite honestly. So I know during USA's, we had to have a lot of those conversations because we went out really fast.
Yeah.
And I work full time, so I don't have the 120-mile weeks in my legs like some of those other girls do and stuff.
Yeah. Cool.
But it's like it's giving yourself, enough during those dark moments. And for a lot of people, it's kind of balancing pushing yourself versus getting out of your own way in order to do it. And because like what I usually just tell myself is just like if somebody was sitting there next to me and they knew exactly what I was thinking and feeling, what would I want to hear? That's what I start saying.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
You mentioned the highs and lows and things like that. Why is it so mentally challenging to shift your mindset when you're injured? And let's talk about the recovery process.
Yeah.
Getting back into it and all that stuff. So where do you start with an athlete? Let's first go with who just got injured.
Yeah. Oh, so like they're out.
They're out today. Today is day one. They pulled their hamstring or they have a stress fracture. Let's go with stress fracture since it's so common.
Oh, they're awful. I've had my fair share of those suckers. So first thing is you are allowed to grieve what happened. It is okay to feel bad. However you feel for a little, you almost kind of want to go through a little bit of a grieving period. Yep. And I know that sounds a little extreme, but I know back in, several years back, I was training for Boston. I broke my foot prepping for Boston, and it felt like, it was
the end of the world. Yeah,
it really did, and I had to let myself feel that. Otherwise, if I were to deny it, it would just the healing process physically and mentally probably would have taken that much longer. So, give yourself, a few days or something like that. Find somebody, if it's not a sports psychologist, find somebody you can vent to who gets it and doesn't try to like fix the way you're feeling. So it's always really annoying. If you know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
No, it's fine. You're going to come back. You're going to do great. When
Shut up,
you
I just want to bitch for a while.
Stress fracture, nobody wants to hear that. You just want to hear, this sucks. I wish there was something I can do. Here, let me get you a sandwich. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I'll aqua jog with you. But after that, it's actually good, I think, to learn about the injury, the healing process, what to expect. I think we want to not be in the dark with, if you do have a diagnosis, you want to kind of know what you're in for and what it's like and all that kind of stuff. If you know somebody who's been through it, ask them specific questions. Because I think in my community, I'm the stress fracture resource because I've had 8.
Yep. Wow.
Yeah, I've had a lot of them. But after that, we're athletes. We like training. We like to stick to a plan. I think you want to treat recovery like training. Is you have a plan. This is Tuesdays and Thursdays. You do these PT exercises. You do your icing, you do, your heat, whatever it is, and you just kind of follow that structure. And even cross training, you probably want to do that at the same time you do your regular training and stuff like that. And it's really hard, I think for a lot of people to hang around runners when they're injured.
Yeah.
I'll never forget, I was having a conversation with a girl a while back, and she's like, Adrienne, is it normal to want to punch somebody when you see them running and you can't? And I'm just like, why, yes, it is. Don't do that. That's felony assault. But
that's funny.
Yeah, it was just like, because we have those feelings. So I think you don't want to completely ostracize yourself, I think, for a lot of people, but kind of know what you can and cannot handle.
Got it.
Because I know early on when I dealt with mine, for a few weeks, I did just kind of go radio silence with most of the running community and stuff like that. That's what I needed. But then I reached a point, I'm like, okay, we're going to get back out there because these are your people and this is your sport. And we need to stay in touch with this. So you kind of ease back in that way too. During when you're actually injured, and then afterward, it becomes a whole other process.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Let's talk about, you go from 20-mile long runs to 20-minute long runs. And how do you manage Amelia Boone was very vocal with this and coming back from some of the things she's experienced. And she found it difficult to honor, I don't want to say honor her body, but honor the recovery necessary for a 20-minute run. And doing all the, let's talk about that.
Yeah. I mean, for a lot of us, and especially Amelia Boone's at a high level, I can't speak for her, but I know as an ego, it was a huge shot to my ego when I was younger, coming off of injuries. So this is a hard thing for a lot of us to wrap our heads around, but here's where you start. You start the day you get out of that boot or whatever you're in and you're cleared. And that is where you start setting your goals. We don't want to think, as much as we can. We can't go back. We can't go back in time. I know there's a lot of that car saying or whatever. You can't go back in time, but you can wind the clock back up again. We gotta wind the hell out of this clock back and stuff like that. So I always recommend is just have a process goal for each stage. One stage is just getting reacquainted with running. And your goal, and we don't even have a deadline, initially, it's just, here is what we're going for, is not feeling like a baby fawn while you run. Then it goes to, okay, now we don't want to feel like, we're not a baby fawn anymore, but we don't want to feel like we smoked 20 cigarettes a day or whatever. Or just came
to 12,000 feet altitude.
Yeah, exactly. And what we want to, and what I work pretty hard with is we set these short-term goals, and during it, we have check-in points. Like you do, you work your recovery plan, and if something happens, you need to kind of go through the same process. Maybe if we encounter a setback, we make a contingency plan for that. Like, what if you need to cross train?
Right.
What is the threshold when you know you're doing too much? That's a really important discussion to have. But I have athletes think in terms of weeks, not days, because I know it's really deceptive if we look from just yesterday to today. Well, I don't feel any better. My leg still feels weird. I'm still running 10-minute pace or something like that. So, I know when I recovered, it was like Saturday to Saturday, because that was my long run day typically. Is I was like, how am I doing this Saturday? And then I would look at, okay, I'm more comfortable on a 3-mile run, or, okay, my pace is back under 9 minutes or something. And we want to look at where we've come from the starting point once we get cleared versus anything else. So massive goals, we don't want to, it's kind of hard. I know with pros and stuff like that, it's a different ball game when they have to get out there and race. For people who, don't have a real tight time schedule, is I was just like, okay, I wouldn't schedule any races out for another few months, so you can really get comfortable and get confident. Because sometimes if we get back in the game too early, we risk re-injury, B, risk just getting into a mental hole we don't necessarily need to get into, because a lot of runners, we really heavily identify with our sport. So
makes sense. Mm-hmm. Do you think the highs and lows are critical? Do you think that the lows make the highs better?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because I think, just like with anything else, if it's worth it to us, we're going to fight for it, and it's not always going to be easy. Because just think of PR. A PR hurts like hell, doesn't it?
Right.
But you were really, really proud of that PR because of what you went through to get it.
Right.
But it's being able to wrap your head around the fact that, okay, this is temporary, and be able to cope with it when you are in a low. And just kind of having that mindfulness. I keep using the term zooming out. I sound like David Roche, but that's really important.
Yeah. Cool. Less so about injury, more so about plateauing. Where do you try and steer an athlete who has hit that plateau?
Okay. Depends on their past few training cycles. I want them to talk about what they've been doing. Have they taken any downtime? Have they made any changes and stuff like that? Because a lot of times, especially with adult athletes, they kind of skip the off season. Yep. I remember we did that article with Amanda Loudon a while back about the off season. Some people they kind of do like a quasi off season.
Yep.
Okay for some people, not so much for others. I think if we don't do that, that's something I'm going to be like, okay, have you ever thought about just taking just like a hard pause just for a little bit? You don't have to stop running, but just kind of disconnecting and just finding your joy again, instead of just running the grind and running the rat wheel. Another thing is goals. Is how are they setting their goals? Is it just this rigid, fixed thing? And is that how they're defining success? And is that what's making them feel like they're plateauing? Setting some short-term, realistic, process-oriented goals is another thing to kind of work through a plateau.
Cool. So you touched on rest and recovery.
Yes.
My favorite topic.
I noticed that actually on Instagram.
Why do you think it's so hard for athletes to do it?
Oh gosh, there's a lot of reasons. Well, a lot of people are just really dang competitive.
Yep.
And
that's why you have to brag about your rest, right?
Yeah. And you're the only person I know of that does that, to be honest. Which I think is great, because I'm like, dang, I want to try that recipe.
No, it's wild, and we started the Rest Day Brags, as a joke about a shower beer, and it was a tweet between David and Amelia, like, why are we always just bragging about the punishing 20-mile long runs? Why can't we brag about, having a beer in the shower, or couch to refrigerator repeats?
Right.
and the responses we're getting are wild. Like I said, we started as a joke.
Yeah.
6,000 people have used that hashtag.
That's hilarious. I'm going to start using it now too.
Yeah. And people are messaging us like, I thought I was alone. I thought I was the only person that dealt with this problem.
Yeah.
So why do you think that so many people just think that they're the only ones? Like, woe is me, I'm the only person that deals with this, and it's a massive problem that they have to ignore and push under the rug as a result.
Yeah, some of it I think is cultural, because maybe these poor people have just seen one too many Nike and Gatorade commercials in their day, to where it's just like these people, they're just going all out all the time.
Yeah.
So I think like sometimes there's this image of that this is what it takes to be successful.
Yeah.
And to be quite honest, a lot of that's product marketing, which I mean, that's too simple of an answer.
That makes sense. I mean, we're in this society where we reward or not reward, but glorify being busy.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And we glorify, I haven't slept, more than 6 hours in years. And and so we're just trying to reverse that and brag about like, oh, I got 8 hours of sleep last night. Right. Fucking awesome. And I can swear because this is my podcast.
Yeah.
No, it's crazy, where things have gone.
Yeah.
Some
of it is just misinformation, and a lot of times I see it as a lack of trust. It kind of stems from like a lack of confidence. Is because athletes have told me in the past where I don't think I'm fast enough, or I have to do this. I have to work. It's this idea I have to work harder than everybody else. Which, I mean, we all have different genetics, but we're all human, and humans do need to like stop what they're doing every once in a while. So it's learning how to I just convince some of my athletes, and I've had some friends who there's like, I hate rest days. I hate them. I hate them.
So what do you tell an athlete like that?
I'm like, just try it. And I have texted pictures once, several times of me napping on the couch, or what else have I done? Just like a pile, like my clothes just sitting there, not doing anything. Like I've posted a picture once of like my rest day with 0 miles. I also am notorious for posting 0.99 GPS pictures. My friends really hate that.
That's great.
It's tongue in cheek and it's Adrienne being Adrienne, but I'm trying to get a point across that
literally,
look, it doesn't matter. I was like, it is. Yeah, it's one more step, and I could take it, but that is not going to make or break a race.
Right. Totally.
And I think it's confident. I think, and this is just my bias, it's confidence and it's trust.
Trusting the process.
You trust the process, and you have confidence in yourself. And you know that, okay, this actually is good for me, and I'm not going to lose all this fitness or anything like that if I rest. There's that. And then I know it's sometimes, an issue I run into is like body image. Like I've seen runners, they're afraid they're going to gain weight if they don't run every day or whatever. So, which I can go down a whole rabbit hole with.
Yeah, let's go down that rabbit hole.
Oh, you want to? Okay.
Yeah.
You want to?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So was that something somebody asked about?
It's always on the radar. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know Kate Grace just posted that thing on racing and stuff, but it's just like, what I'm tracking is it's just this huge ideal of just not feeling good enough. Like it's like, there's this attitude, you're never going to be fit enough. You can always improve more. You could always look better, or you want to look like so-and-so, and I can't give an inch. Otherwise, I'm going to lose my progress. Again, it ties back to fear, lack of self-awareness, lack of self-acceptance. I think that's where a lot of it is. Like, I only accept myself when I'm doing these things, eating these things, looking this way. And it's hard sometimes for people to let go of that.
It's wild. I mean, talking about the nutrition and body image side of it and rest and stuff. I used to be super restrictive with my diet. Not I wouldn't say over the line, but there was a line. There was a line. I was close to it.
Mhm.
My
Well, we
mom and
have this idea. This is what we're supposed to do if we want to be good.
right, and so my mom and sister have celiac. I don't, and I cut out gluten, and I fell into the trap of, oh, you should cut out gluten because it's better for you.
Right.
Um, and so it was sort of like a vicious cycle of I cut it out for so many years for simplicity's sake
Mhm.
because I was living at home,
Yeah.
and there was no gluten in the house. It was super easy to eat all the rice pasta and all that
Right.
stuff.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
then when you add it back in, it doesn't feel good. And
Yeah.
so I was super restrictive around that. I wouldn't eat cookies or sugar or
Mhm.
sweets or
Mhm.
whatever. And for whatever reason, over the last year and a half, I've just I've gone away from like the 98% being 98% great
Yes.
and dropped to 80% good. And I
Right.
feel
Well, because the
way better.
98% is basically unsustainable.
Right. Yeah, it's amazing. And I mean, anecdotally, I've actually lost weight. I've lost a pound or two, um, eating what I want, eating more than I was
Mhm.
eating prior. I had a conversation with one of our sports dietitians. She was like,
Yeah.
"You're actually under eating,"
Yeah.
and that was a huge problem.
Yeah.
So my recovery got better.
Yep.
I eat the full pizza
Yep.
and enjoy it too. But it was relatively easy for me to do that.
Mhm.
How do you take an athlete um, who doesn't find that to be easy? How do you get an athlete to get to that end zone, but
Right.
the steps to get there are much harder?
Yeah. Well, it comes to changing their relationship with food.
Hmm.
And because our society has been really good at demonizing certain foods.
Right.
Because I mean, we live in the world of keto and all those other kind of things, which I know there's a place for these certain
Right.
diets, but because somebody says it's a good thing doesn't make it good for everybody else.
Right.
So what I want them to do is, first of all, they just need to be educated, and depending on who I'm talking to, I just kind of slide things in. If they're really open and receptive, then I'll take it a little bit further with them. But I have to meet the athlete I'm working with where they're at,
Hmm.
and then we just start doing little experiments. Is I was like, okay, let's eat a cookie before practice or something like that. Report back to me. If something bad happens, you can scream at me and tell me I'm a bad person. If you run well, then we need to kind of look at this a little bit. Like I have a personal tradition before every race I run, 5K through half marathon, marathon. The day before, I eat a chocolate chip cookie. It's tradition, and it's just like the night before. It's like I got to have my cookie
Yeah.
because I remember like I gave a cookie away a long time ago when I was in my 20s because like no, I can't have junk because I fell victim to that too.
Yeah.
I have all this knowledge, but I still screwed things up when I was younger. But it's just
Is that
it's just
funny how
fun,
that works?
you know.
Yeah.
And I just remember like watching the girl I gave the cookie to freaking pass me in this race.
Right.
And okay, legit, this was what my thought process was. It's like that bitch ate my cookie. So
Right.
ever since then, I was just like, no, but just and sometimes it takes an experience for these athletes because like I'm pulling the horse to water, they're not drinking it.
Right.
Gonna have to get splashed in their face sometimes for them to realize it. Then we talk about it, and then we're like, okay, how can we incorporate this? But a lot of times it's just like, okay, just start doing some experiments. So hopefully I answered your question.
Yeah. No, I think that
Didn't
was.
go too far out on left
I
field.
think that was good. Now I want a cookie. My girlfriend made me some delicious s'mores cookies that I'm gonna.
Yeah, I kind of want one too now.
Yeah.
So
I'll,
I guess
I'll
I'll
mail
take
you
care of
one.
that.
They're very good. Um, let's talk about the 5K. The 5K is really interesting.
Oh, it is.
Yeah. I raced one 2 weeks ago, and
Uh-huh.
it was the best performance I've ever had. I didn't PR, but I was close, and
Mhm.
the I didn't look at my watch once.
Cool.
And the interesting thing was, I massively negative split it, so
Mhm.
there was a little bit more capacity maybe towards the beginning, but
Mhm.
what I loved most about the race was how open I was to the pain, and
Yeah.
how open I was to
Yeah.
this fucking hurts.
Yeah.
Make it hurt more.
Yeah. You hit the nail right on the head right there. Is it's changed, like just like I was talking about your relationship with food, your relationship with pain.
Yep.
If you look at it as it's just a necessary thing, then it becomes a challenge. If we freak out, it becomes a threat. And I can't feel like this. I can't handle it. I mean, our primitive brains just like all it up.
Away, yeah.
But if we're smart, we can use our cerebral cortex and actually process appropriately. Is you actually kind of, in a weird way, you want to expect it and embrace it, and almost like what you went through, want it more.
Yeah. So that's the trick. It's
you don't resist it, you lean into it.
Yeah. And the lean into it was a phrase that really resonated with Ben. He's like, that's what we train for. We train for that moment. And we have it's a, I forget who said, but pressure is a privilege. And you don't necessarily get that all the time in training. You don't necessarily get the opportunity to, really see what you're made of when things start to hurt. And sometimes it's cool because you can see people in front of you and just start picking them off. And other times you're just a sitting duck waiting to be picked off, and there's nobody else around you, or something in between. So that's the ticket. It's just accepting that it's going to hurt and looking forward.
It's acceptance, and you also need to believe that you can sustain what you're doing.
So how do you train for that? How do you because it's not, I don't think everyone can do it straight from the start.
Right.
So how do you get there?
Some of it does come from workouts and taking some risks. And you get a really hard workout on your schedule and you're just like, ooh, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's when you need to be like, okay, I need to practice dealing with this. And it doesn't matter if I succeed or fail in this, we're practicing going into the hurt locker.
So you get a couple things on the calendar that really make you.
Well, here's the deal. It's just like you need to do things that make you uncomfortable to grow.
Right.
And if you have the opportunity to do it in training, do that. I know it's never going to be exactly like a race, but I know just from my own experience and experience of athletes I've worked with, one of the big things is knowing what to say. Like taking past races and, when you finish, you got something else in the tank, you got to take a note of that, right? Be like, okay, I actually do have more. Yep. So I always call it the critical moment in the race when that hits. Maybe it's just one word or two, but, say something to yourself. Like I recall 5K, I didn't look at my watch and I ran significantly faster than I anticipated. And yeah, it hurt. But I was like enjoying it.
Yeah.
And, kind of embracing it. But I just remember just telling myself what to do the whole time. Because I just said, keep the pressure on, keep the pressure on, keep the pressure on. Because I was leading the race.
Yeah.
And it was weird. You get in that spot to where you're almost enjoying it. I don't know if you talk what I'm talking about, but into being open to whatever happens.
Yeah.
So I had done a 5K before that, and it wasn't as bad as I thought at mile 1.5 because our mind's going to tell us it's horrible. It necessarily isn't always that bad. And I recommend, I think Brian Barraza calls it the Jedi mind trick. You want to think to yourself, you're going to have a moment in the race where you're going to be like, oh, okay, I don't know if I can sustain this, but you want to almost project yourself and think about like, okay, it's the end of the race. You're on the course, but you imagine telling yourself it wasn't that bad because that's the truth, isn't it?
I love that. I mean, it's like, you're going to survive probably.
Yeah. Honestly, the kid's a genius. I picked that up on Steve Magnus's podcast a while back. And I was just like, that's a great way to put it is, yeah, you want to be present, but for a split second, you want to think, okay, when this is done, I'm going to look back at this and it really is not going to be as bad as I thought it was.
Yeah. So one thing that I try and visualize is me running through the finisher's chute, just like completely spent. And I just love that.
Yeah.
I love that feeling. So where do you visualize?
That's good because you're programming your mind to send the message that this is okay, this is what we want.
Yeah.
Because if we don't have the arms outstretched, breaking the tape, looking flawless,
I'll send you a photo from
a
my
lot of
finish. I
times
was
that
not
does
looking
not
flawless.
happen. Then we get discouraged. But if that's like what we're going for, our mind's going to go, or our body's going to follow where our mind goes, and it's going to be spent in the finish shoot, and you're going to like it.
So where do you drop that in? I mean, you can't do that in mile one, right?
Oh, that it kind of depends. You do want to. Here's my template for running a 5K. You guys ready for this? Because this may be the best part of this whole podcast.
I love it.
Travel on. Okay, first mile, run with relaxation, because you're going to need that. You're going to need that energy. You're going to need that towards the end of the race. Second mile, you're going to run it with focus. Pick something, someone, try and stay on pace. It's a very purposeful mile. Mile 3 to 3.1, it's all heart.
I love it. I'm writing it down right now. I'm going to go run a 5K.
There you go.
Just kidding.
And it's ridiculously simple, but it kind of explains in a nutshell the process of it. You need to chill just enough in the first mile. So because we notoriously overrun the first mile, because we kind of overestimate how hard we can go and underestimate how bad we're going to hurt.
Yeah.
But if we know it's going to take heart to the finish, then it's going to be easier to kind of compartmentalize, and then you're not caught off guard.
Definitely. So how do you take that to a marathon or a 50K?
Oh, okay. Just break it up into thirds or fourths. So, like half marathons, I take them usually a 5K at a time. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, okay, this is all I care about is I just want you to hold 6:30s for this 5K. So, I ran a half marathon in December, and within that 5K, I broke it down even more. And I just kind of look at my watch. Okay, this is all you got to do for this mile. And I really like to do. I'm not a math person, but I love like fractions when it comes to a race.
Yeah,
I love fractions, so I just like divide that sucker up as much as I can.
Right.
And it seems to serve the athletes I work with well too.
I love it.
So Ironman coming up, yeah, I call it boxing the race up. We get the race and we put the distances all in really nice little boxes, and within each box there's tasks. So, and especially if you're doing a major endurance event, do you need to fuel? Do you need to drink? What are the things that you need to do in this box? It gives you something to focus on. Mm-hmm. And then you're not thinking, oh my God, I still have 20 something miles to go. It's what's important now.
Right. Makes sense. So how much can a mentally sound athlete overcome a physically average athlete?
Ooh, that's a good question. Actually, I'm like, it's going to take me a moment to kind of.
The question was worded.
Yeah.
How what matters between the ears is nearly as important as what your body can do. So
it's a lot of times we put our own ceiling on ourselves, because I've seen a lot of athletes that are really talented but don't necessarily believe that they are.
Yep.
So they only make it so far. But those who maybe they don't have quite the genetic gifts, however, they believe that they can do the training, they believe that they can improve. That tends to take these people pretty far. And so
that self-belief and
yeah, exactly. Because I mean, we think of, we always have those stories of the athlete who maybe wasn't as talented but made it through the ranks and is now like a collegiate or a pro runner or something mm-hmm. like that. It kind of comes down to self-awareness. What do I need? What kind of athlete am I? And then learning to operate in that space. But knowing that, yes, I have the capacity to improve.
Cool. A question from Megan Roche mm-hmm. was, how do we turn nerves into excitement and opportunity during pre-race moments? She's seen a lot of athletes mm-hmm. Struggle with this.
Okay. It's an appraisal thing. It's nervousness and excitement physically feels about the same. Mm-hmm. It's our interpretation of the event. So you heard me, I probably referenced this earlier. You want to view the race as a challenge and not a threat. Because if it's a challenge, we're going to be like, okay, I can't wait. Let me at this.
Yep.
If it's a threat, you're just like, no, please don't fire the gun. I'm not ready.
Yeah.
We're like prone to panic. So we want to reframe the situation, and we want to look at a race as something we get to do, as opposed to something that we have to do. Because I'm not gonna lie, I was scared shitless at first at USA Cross. I mean, I had good reason to. I got lapped by Shelby Houlihan. And it's just like I'm not proud. I'm not too proud to admit that. But
I mean, that's cool.
Yeah, I had this really cool moment actually where we take the starting line, get into our boxes, and suddenly, like this thing came over me. I'm just like, let's freaking go. I was just like, I cannot believe I'm here. I'm like, this is crazy. I'm gonna go. I'm just going to go for it. So I looked at it as, oh my God, I have no idea what's going to happen. And that's what makes this so awesome.
Yeah.
You kind of just have to embrace that.
I had the same thing going into a 5K last fall. And I remember vividly standing on the start line. I hadn't raced. So this was September of 2017. I hadn't raced since April at the marathon. And I was standing on the start line. I was just like, let me go.
Yeah.
Just like, unleash me, basically.
Yeah, that usually, when you're in that type of a mental state, you are more than likely going to run well.
Yeah.
I
came in second that day, and
nice.
It was like you come off the line, and it's like you were saying, like all you have to do is the don't go out too hot.
Yeah. It's you got to use your head, but at the same time, you just want to frame it as best you can as a challenge. And you're going to have doubts. Those are normal. But it's not engaging, or I say dancing with doubt and chasing after them. Because, we can think of, these negative things could happen. But there's a lot of good things that can happen too. So you pick your poison. They're your thoughts. You have control over them. You choose.
Yeah. It's such a cool feeling when that's the mindset you're in.
Oh yeah.
Just like so primitive. Like I'm a fucking animal. I'm about to roar. Like let's go. Oh man, I want to race right now.
I'm so ready to get back to training now after having this conversation.
Yeah, I'm bummed I'm bike commuting. I'll be racing all the cars on the way home tonight. I'm
glad to know that I served a purpose to pump you up today, Jonathan.
Yeah, I'm going to have the most amped up bike ever.
Yeah, everything's going to be a challenge from now on.
I mean, have you ever rode a bike in Boston? It is a challenge.
I've walked around Boston, and I kind of have an idea. Have never biked it.
Yeah, you sort of need this, like, everyone, like, me against the world mentality when you're bike commuting in Boston.
Well, you know what? That's the same as the freeway in Texas.
Yeah.
So we're a little brazen in our vehicles out here.
Got it.
So sometimes red lights aren't actually red lights.
It's just a suggestion. So viewing the challenge as viewing the race as a challenge and not a threat is how to turn the nerves into that.
Well, it's just like you just got to tell your lizard brain to shut up. It's got the primitive brain. It's just like it wants something, like it wants to be comfortable, but you sign up to for a race.
You're here for a reason.
Comfortable. So
I had a really good chat with Steph Violet ahead of Western States this past year. I think it was the Thursday before the race, and what we concluded. She said she was nervous. I mean, she was running 100 miles, so fair point. Touche. I was nervous. I was nervous for her, and I wasn't even running the race. We got to, like, nerves mean you care. So how what would you tell an athlete that isn't nervous? Is that a good thing?
Depends on who it is. If you're usually nervous and you're not nervous,
when it's not paired with confidence.
Yeah. Oh, when they're saying they're not nervous and they're not confident.
Yeah.
Then they've given up on themselves for that event. Obviously, what would I tell them is what's the best,
try again next week.
Yeah. Well, what's the best case scenario for this, and what would make this a positive event for you? So, do you need to pop your watch off and run by feel? What are some things that you need to What are some things that may be helpful here?
Got
That, or if they're not feeling that, how many races have you run in the past 6 months?
it.
We've raced a lot.
Is your name Mike Wardian? If it's not, maybe
Yeah,
consider
yeah.
it.
Because sometimes, because I want to know the big picture as to
Yeah.
why that's happening, and we do. We just have days where we're just not feeling it, and that's okay too.
Yeah.
We just kind of have to look at it for what it is. Yeah, that wasn't great. I wasn't feeling one way or another, and that's okay. It's
Got it.
when we like hold on to that and think it means something that it doesn't is when we start going off the rails.
Got it. Makes sense. Let's talk about balance. What are your thoughts on balance for an athlete?
It looks different for any human.
Required.
Right. If you are able to, if what you're doing feels sustainable, it brings you joy, a good portion of the time. It doesn't mean that you're not going to get stressed out or anything like that. But if you're operating within kind of where you feel like you're happy and you're getting what you need and and you have meaningful relationships, you're probably on to something. And it's going to look different, I think, as we kind of go throughout kind of our running lives and our regular lives.
Yeah.
Because I've had to make adjustments over the past year because I reopened I changed offices and all that kind of stuff and added another location. So I was running 60 miles a week and all that kind of stuff. Last spring, I was traveling a lot for work. I just hit a wall. I had crossed the line. Like, I just remember failing a tempo on a hotel treadmill, and I'm just like, okay, we're gonna have to
Back up
back here. I was just like, okay, this is not typical. So periodically, you just have to check in with yourself and be like, okay, what am I doing that's working?
Yeah.
What am I doing that's not working? And if you think nothing, you need to look a little bit further and be really honest with yourself. Because I was in Omaha, Nebraska, of all places, actually a year ago, and I'm just jogging around in the snow, and I'm just like, okay, you know what? This is as fast and as far as we need to go. I was just like, when you get home, we're going to regroup. So it wasn't an easy conversation to have with my coach at the time, but I was just like, dude, I've just encountered a lot of life change. We're gonna have to rearrange some things. So, mentally, it was taking some of the intervals off of workouts, and it was just kind of finding my sweet spot and finding my enjoyment with running, then building back up.
Cool.
So sometimes I raced great. I honestly, I had my best 2 seasons after that break because I was able to mentally recharge.
I love it. What are some of the takeaways you've had from Happy Runner as an expert in the field?
I love the why.
Yeah.
And I love how that's like one of the biggest parts of at least the section that I'm on.
Yeah.
I also love the way they wrote the thing because it's like that's working with me, like that kind of sound. I mean, that's kind of how I sound.
Yeah.
Real informal, real lighthearted, and all that kind of stuff. But what I also like about it is it's about sustainable running, and it's about you can be successful and you can be happy.
Yeah.
And they don't have to be mutually exclusive and stuff like that. I think that's really cool.
I love it. And so I started working with David a year and a half ago, or no, like 3/4 of a year ago. Anyway, and that's been the biggest change. It's been like we're not taking massive risks.
Yeah.
And when we do, what's happening, and like this is he gave me a downhill 10K workout, and he said impress yourself, and that was his.
Oh my God, I love that.
Yeah. And so I PR'd my 10K by 3 minutes.
That's awesome.
And you don't get those.
Yeah.
Do you think there's something to it there that like it's a very consistent, very conservative approach, but focused on like long term, but then you have those little.
Guess what? Usually short-term gains are great, but that's the exception more than the rule.
Right.
So if you can wrap your head around this long-term growth, and the only way to get there is to like what you're doing,
right, and not overtrain,
be happy and stuff like that.
Right.
So I I like that viewpoint. I like that context.
Cool. What are your recommendations on how to pick a race?
Ooh, it just kind of depends on what kind of setting do you like to race in. What do you want to get out of the race? If you want a fast time, obviously you want to pick accordingly there. Physiologically, know your strengths and weaknesses. Like I live in Houston, but I am really not a good heat runner, or it kind of stinks. But so I don't race much in the summer. So I mean I kind of pick seasonally.
Yep.
It's, a lot of times play to your strengths.
Cool. Well, I could talk to you for hours on this. This has been fascinating. I don't want to take too much of your time, but I just have a couple more questions.
Yeah.
What
session coming in a couple minutes. So
okay, cool. What excites you about training?
Oh, a lot of things. What excites me is I like to watch myself grow.
Yeah.
I really do. I do a lot of my workouts by myself. I have some training partners and everything like that. But honestly, I like to go out and impress myself, to be honest. Yeah. And I kind of like the science of it is it's a project. It's
right.
Like, it's a science project. It's an art project. It's just like this little thing that I get to make.
Right.
So I actually write my own training schedule currently.
Oh, cool.
I love it. And I love, I'm a really purpose-driven, kind of structured-oriented person.
Yep.
So I love being able to play around with different elements like aerobic strength, or it's just fun to build new things.
Yeah, it's like a puzzle.
Yeah, I think that's what I like it, because I've kind of learned, in kind of I guess I can say my second running life where I've been healthy and training consistently for the past few years.
Mm-hmm.
I've really liked the whole kind of embracing the unknown and just trying new things.
Yeah, I love it. I think my last question is, what gets you out the door in the morning or evening if you're an evening runner?
What gets me out the door in the morning?
Yeah.
That is, no matter what happens in my day, I did something for me that I love doing.
Cool.
And I think it makes me a better professional. I think I didn't include that in what got me into this field, but being a runner pairs very well with being in sports psychology because you need that patience. You need some stamina because you're probably going to be seeing a lot of people
right.
in a day and doing a lot of different things. It sets the tone.
Cool.
And I have a really impressive shoe rack. So I get to look nice. I just feel the most like myself.
Nice. Well, awesome.
I get to help people. So
yeah, that's the best part, and watching their journey.
Mm-hmm.
Well, cool. Thank you so much for this. Where can people find you on the internet?
Okay. I'm on most social media channels, Instagram, Twitter. Instagram, it's my name, Adrienne, Langelier. Just type Adrienne, you'll be able to find me. I have a practice Facebook page that I try to be pretty interactive on. My 15 Minutes of Fame, I contributed to Kara Goucher's latest book, Strong. So cool. I'm in there. Cool experience right there.
That's awesome.
I also have a practice website, langelierspc.com. So I try to keep it pretty entertaining online.
Awesome. Well, I'll link to this in the show notes that I'll be learning how to create, and people can follow along.
All right. Well, I enjoyed this, Jonathan. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thanks for doing it.
Of course.
All right. Bye. That's it for today's episode. Like many long runs, it's sad when it has to end. I hope you join in next week on For the Long Run. And in the meantime, happy trails. If you've enjoyed this episode, it would mean a lot to me if you shared it so that others can find it and enjoy it too.